Hi guys, welcome to Why Do I Love Twin Peaks? It's a question that has often been asked, and I've been asking it I don't know how long now. But will we ever get to the bottom of the real reasons? Well, probably not. Everyone's got their own reasons for it, and every one of them is interesting and valid to me. So, another guest who's going to be chatting with me about this today is none other than Cameron. So, welcome, Cameron. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Right. Cameron, first question, okay, I ask everyone, is when did you first discover Twin Peaks?
Well, it would have been when it came out in 1990. I was actually kind of primed for it because just before, I think about 6 months earlier, I had a teacher who knew I loved film say to me, "Have you ever seen Blue Velvet?" And I said, no, but I remember the trailers for it when it had come out. And because there was very little dialogue in those trailers, I always thought it was sort of like a Eastern European, like Romanian film or something like that, because the way Isabella Rossellini looked with the wig and the robe and all that. But I got a hold of Blue Velvet, loved it. Um, and it was really, I think that was the first David Lynch movie I had seen from start to finish. I remember when I was a kid, Elephant Man was on cable, and those opening 5 minutes scared me to death. So I don't think I got very far in that movie. Dune, I know David doesn't think too much of it, but I remember getting about 15 minutes into that movie and not really knowing, going, this isn't Star Wars. And like, just kind of, I like the film now a lot, especially in the 4K Arrow disc that they put out because it looks stunning and beautiful. But in pan and scan, 1985 VHS, it didn't look great, and I couldn't follow the story, so I kind of opted out. And I remember seeing commercials for Eraserhead. They used to play that on cable at midnight, sort of like a Friday or Saturday night midnight movie. But I never was up late enough to see it. But I had seen Blue Velvet, really liked it. It reminded me a lot of a film that came out actually the same year as Blue Velvet called Something Wild, with Jonathan Demme directed it. And there's a moment halfway through Something Wild that is the almost the exact thing in Blue Velvet where the innocent hero and the lead lady get captured by her ex-boyfriend or boyfriend and is then taken on a crime spree. Right. So I thought, oh wow, that's kind of cool. And they're both about Americana. So love Blue Velvet. And then all of a sudden, I get wind that David Lynch is going to be making sort of Blue Velvet for TV, starring Kyle McLaughlin, right? I'm like, okay, I'm there. Um, and the buildup for that 2 hour premiere was huge. I mean, it was all over, obviously ABC television. There was commercials about it. I remember one of the commercials was just it just showed the phone just hanging there, and I mean, I was like, what is this thing? And I mean, I was hooked. And Angela Badalamenti doing the music, right? I mean, it's just like what's so bizarre about Twin Peaks then versus now is that in 1990, while you could follow it, right? You really had to pay attention. It felt very complex. I mean, you could follow it, but it definitely had a lot of layers, and you had to pay attention, right? But now when you go back and watch it, it's like, yes, those things are there, but it's almost like comfort food. It's so because we've seen so many series over the years that have done the long form storytelling. Twin Peaks season one is very quaint. It's like really we thought this was complex, but we hadn't seen anything like that before, right? But now our brains have been trained for 30 something years that like now you go back and it's like you could put on Twin Peaks and walk around the room and fold laundry and you know exactly where you are and what you're doing. But season three is a lot like how season one felt, which like you have to pay attention. You can't just put it on in the background. So that's how I discovered it and was hooked. And then they re-aired it again during the summer, right before season two started. Because I know where you lived, they played it straight through, right? It was like seasons one through two.
Um, that's how I always thought.
Right.
Because my mind plays tricks over 30 odd years. But apparently that wasn't the case. Um, I spoke to a friend in the UK here that we and he was I asked him about that and I said, did it play pretty much as soon as season one ended? Did it start straight away with season two? He said no, there was a gap there was a winter gap.
Mm,
So it came on apparently around September or October here. We got it about 6 months after you did. You got it. It started in April there, didn't it?
hmm.
Yeah, we got it around September or October. Then there was a gap, I think, for maybe November, December time. So there was a couple, 2 or 3 months gap. Then it started again around January time the following year.
So
Apparently,
they
yeah.
re-aired it over the summer, and then it was the end of September where season two started for us. And there was a Time magazine that came out just before that had David Lynch on the cover, and they called him the Wild at Art Genius because in August of that year, Wild at Heart had come out. But if you had opened up Time magazine, they had a picture of Cooper on the ground of his hotel room with the blood. And that was our first image of season two. So I was like, oh my God, he did get shot, right? Because like the feeling was that either he was going to be dead or he had a vest on and so he's going to be fine. But that showed him being very wounded. And so that was our first inkling about them. But what I remember the most about that time, and I've talked with other people about this off video, but we've all kind of come to the consensus that there was no greater time. And I take this knowing how we were during 2017. There was no greater time to be a David Lynch fan than 1990 because you had Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet was still like really popular, even though it had come out years before. It had been just like really big again in the video market. Um, Wild at Heart he had just won the Cannes Film Festival. Wild at Heart was coming out in August. Season two of Twin Peaks was coming out. He had a show called American Chronicles that was about to drop, right? Industrial Symphony number one was coming out. I mean, like it was the year of David Lynch. So much so that the world turned against him 2 years later. But I mean, like it was. I mean, I don't. Do you remember that time? Like he was everywhere, and it was like
What's
he
interesting, Cameron, is that I have again, my memory is kind of like plays tricks with when I got switched on to Lynch, as it were. I can't remember whether I was aware of him prior to Twin Peaks
Mm,
or whether I got into his films after Twin Peaks. I remember seeing The Elephant Man, but I didn't put two and two together that was the same director at the time.
right.
It was just a film I love, and it's a beautiful film. And then maybe I didn't realize that was Lynch that did Twin Peaks. I don't think it added up to me. So, and I never saw Firewalk with Me until a few years after it was released. I think it was on the late night channel, late night, like some bloody stupid time in the early morning, and I saw it then. Similarly, I saw Blue Velvet like that too when I saw a late night channel thing. So I think it was possibly after Twin Peaks that discovered Lynch's other work, and then so I was a bit late to the party, I suppose. You know.
I just remember hearing right before season two that if you took Eraserhead and Elephant Man and Dune and Blue Velvet, um, that before the Twin Peaks pilot had come out, David Lynch had only I'm taking out his commercials, but he had only committed to about 8 hours of celluloid. That's it, 8 hours before 1990. After 1990, I mean, he was directing the pilot. He directed several episodes of season two. Wild at Heart. I mean, it was. I mean, so it's like he almost almost took another 10 hours just in that one year. So he was just. I mean, he was just on fire. And um, I mean, people talk about David Lynch all the time on social media. I understand why, but I don't think he will ever be as big as he was in 1990. And we couldn't even talk about him on social media at that time. But I mean, like everywhere you went, there were books, there were magazines, there were I mean, he was right up there with like Steven Spielberg in terms of like people knew who he was, which is kind of funny when you hear these stories that originally Spielberg was going to direct the second season premiere until David Lynch decided to do it himself because he didn't think he was going to have time to do it. And Spielberg was like, let me do it, let me do it. Um, that's an I would love to like step into an alternate world and see what that would have been like. I don't think the waiter would have come in so many times saying I heard about you. but um but yeah, I mean it's just and because I was 14 years old at that time, right? It was sort of, and because um Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks and Wild at Heart, even though they are in different genres, there's mystery and soap opera, surreal and road movie and that kind of thing. They are in essence coming of age movies, right? I mean, Jeffrey's whole, journey, Twin Peaks, even though it has a lot of adults, there's also a lot of teenagers going through rites of passage. While the Heart, Sailor and Lula, you know, realizing that the world is more dangerous than maybe they were aware of. Um, so that as a 14-year-old rang true, right? So when people talk about, and I actually told this to Colin McLaughlin, and I said, people who were older than me looked up to like Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. But I was, even though I was seeing those movies in the theater, I was very young. So Luke Skywalker was just cool, Luke Skywalker. But because I was at this age, 13, 14, Colin McLaughlin was my Luke Skywalker. If you look at Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, I mean, like that, he was my Luke Skywalker. And he was very, uh, taken with that. But I think that's true for a lot of us at that time. Um, because whenever you talk to somebody about a work of art that touched them at a particular time or transcended them to knowing like this is the difference between a movie and a film or uh, you know, like like actually feeling a work of art, it's usually around that time that you are aware. I would say between 12 and 16. And so it was, so if I had been 25 at the time of Twin Peaks coming out, I probably would have loved it, but would it have resonated with me in the same way? Maybe not.
You're probably right. I think they do say when you're younger that's kind of the impressionable time, isn't it? When you get into certain things and or certain music or as well, things like that. It's when you're kind of in your teenage years, I think,
Well, like I was
in
20
many ways.
something.
Yeah,
I was 20 something when Lost Highway came out.
yeah.
I
But
like Lost
I was
Highway,
21 when Twin Peaks came out.
right?
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember
Um,
Lost Highway. Like I like that film. I do. I know, but I know people who love that film and love the soundtrack. And how old were they when that movie came out? Usually between 14 and 16, right? When I was 18, Natural Born Killers came out. So it was, and that was a soundtrack that people gravitated towards. So it's like it's interesting when you talk to different David Lynch fans and they tell you what their favorite films are of his. You start to think, oh, so you're about this age then, because you can tell which ones hit. And yet, what's funny is that the older you get, I mean, even though you may have thought about this at the time, but it's very true though. If the older you get, it's like no matter how interesting or surreal or one of his films are, sometimes you do kind of lean back and you think The Straight Story might be his best film of how simplistic it is and yet how deep it is, right? And I don't know any other filmmaker that could have made The Straight Story and literally it's called The Straight Story, right? Even though his name's Alvin Straight. It's a play. It's just literally like I get on my lawnmower here, I get off here. But the music, the performance of a performances, throwing Big Ed in there at a certain point, it's just like what more can you ask for in a film, right? And it's like I love Twin Peaks, I love Blue Velvet, I love Wild at Heart. I will, till the day I die. But sometimes whenever you watch The Straight Story, you think, my God, I don't know anybody else who could make that film. And people say, well, Mary Sweeney and her friend John Roach wrote the script, and so it wasn't really a David Lynch project. Oh no, it's not David Lynch making a Disney film. That is David Lynch's childhood on camera, even though he's dealing with an elderly man, right? Um, and it's like, and that's also a film where if you see people like Freddie Francis doing the cinematography and Jack Fisk doing the art direction. These are people that Lynch has worked with in the past. And while friends, sometimes, obviously I don't know all the details, but, sometimes you fall out of favor with this person. Because remember, David Lynch was married to Jack Fisk's sister, right? And that broke up and all that. But having all these old collaborators all coming back to make the straight story, knowing what the film is about, I think that David Lynch not he you cannot watch that movie and think, oh, that's just a paid assignment. You feel like David Lynch like internalized that entire film. He may, I don't know if he admit that or not, but it feels like that is him literally putting his heart and soul like in a picture, and it's matched by Farnsworth's performance, which is extraordinary.
Oh, amazing, amazing. That man. Um, some beautiful moments in there. Just the moments where he's just talking to someone and contemplating, like
Yeah.
the girl that's like the hitchhiker girl,
Mm-hmm.
and they sit by the fire, and he that wonderful way he sums up, things, and he says, "Put those sticks together,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's
That's
of course you could
family.
break that stick, but put them
Yeah.
all together, and you can't, and that's family, and it can't be. There was just so sweet, sweet moments like that.
But it
Really
almost like
beautiful.
it's
Yeah.
it's but it's like it's when you see the opening of Wild at Heart and Sailor kills Bob Ray Lemon at the opening, right? That was a shock. Oh my God, what are we watching? But when you see that moment in the straight story where he talks about the sticks and he goes, "That's family," that was like Sailor Ripley throwing us to the ground because you know it just if you're I don't know, maybe you have to be a certain age, I don't know, but like that just I mean it felt like he took a bat to us and hit us right in the heart, right? um and I mean there's so many moments, like just the whole thing of like the the ball rolling down the street, and knowing that like he keeps talking about there was a fire and his daughter Rose lost the kids, and they never say it, but the implication is that he was the one watching the kids. And it's his fault that his daughter doesn't have her children anymore. And that is just devastating. Devastating.
And the very final scene
Hmm.
where he makes that last little, goes bumps just about makes it to his brother Lyle's house,
Hmm.
and that scene says an awful lot in very little with very little dialogue.
There's no dialogue
There's
almost.
hardly any. They only say a
Yeah.
couple of words to one another, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and it's Harry Dean's expression on his face, how emotionally choked up he gets when he asks Alvin, "Did you drive that thing all the way to see me?" I
Hmm.
did. And he's just lost for words. It that was so beautiful. It was just
Plus the idea of them filming the entire movie on the exact roads going, and they did it in order just in case something happened or something broke, they could work that into the story. But the beginning of the film, they shot at the beginning and they just went all the way through. Um, yeah, so uh, it's so there's moments where like no matter how much you want to praise this and that of his work, like Mulholland Drive, right? I love Mulholland Drive, right? And I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. And so for me to say, then if you watch the straight story, you think, oh my God, maybe he completely outdid himself with this one. And it's not that complex compared to his other films, like Inland Empire, but it's emotionally complex. And I've talked with so many David Lynch fans, they go like, oh, that's just normal Lynch. I don't want to watch it. I go, well, when you run out of things to watch of his, watch that. And they all come back to me and they go, holy crap. I was not expecting that. And There's very few filmmakers that can, I mean, hit you that hard, and um, it's he's an extraordinary filmmaker, and I do hope we get to see more of his work, at some point.
It's like he can go from that, a very tender story.
Mhm.
The only thing that came close to that would have been The Elephant Man,
Sure.
in terms of that the fact that both the films were based on a true story. It's Alvin Straight, John Merrick. These people were real character, real people. Okay, you get artistic license as well, things like were, especially with the Elephant Man, that not all the things that happened in it were true to life, by the way. But anyway,
But
uh, at the
it
heart of it,
emotionally
they're
rings
very
true.
human stories, which is
Right.
something Lynch. They're probably the most tender films he's done. Less into the like the dream, the surrealist, and
But I could argue
he's
that,
known for, if you know what I mean.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I could argue that if you're in the right state of mind,
yeah.
Sailor and Lula's love for each other is very tender.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he even sings "Love Me Tender" in the film, right?
yeah.
Like, there's that moment where Willem Dafoe and Rossellini are driving him to the bank vault, and they play that Im Aberrant music, and she's on the bed crying, and he's like in the back seat going, "What the hell have I done with my life?" And but he's got to do it because they only got $40, and so he feels trapped, and it's I mean, it's hard for me not to be emotionally invested in that film. Um, when Blue Velvet came out, I didn't see it in the theater, obviously, but from what I understand, after doing tons of research into stuff, it seems apparent that people came away from that film thinking that David Lynch was making fun of people like Jeffrey and Sandy when she's talking about the robins outside with the church music and all that kind of thing. But if you know David Lynch's work and can assess him as a human being, and you go through all of his work, no, he's dead serious. He's not joking around. I mean, like, people thought that was a comedic beat in Blue Velvet. No, he's serious. He means what he's. I mean, like it's not like he's tilting his hand and saying, "Well, the Frank Booth stuff is what I care about, and the Sandy Jeffrey stuff is not." No, it's equal, right? He believes when Jeffrey says, "Why are there people like Frank?" Right? Yeah, that may come across sometimes as a naive, simplistic thing that, like, what? Why is a college student, saying this kind of thing? But it is a question that we've been asking ourselves for 30 years. Why are there people like this? Why are these terrible things happening? Um, it's he's getting to the heart of it with just a simple question.
So let's drag you back to Twin Peaks for a moment.
Sure, sure.
Because we have gone off on a tangent,
Yeah,
but there's no harm in that. But it's our love for David Lynch as well, his other work as well. That's very important. But just getting it back to Twin Peaks
sure.
for now. I want to ask you, Cameron, for you, and it might just be scenes, or it could be complete episodes that just everything, all the elements work beautifully. Are there
Mhm.
any standouts for you? Or just one particular you'd like to talk about? I think I
Scenes?
might know a couple of them. We all, but there might be ones that, there might be others that, are not the
Well,
norm.
I think season one is just incredible. I mean, it's what I consider all killer, no filler. I mean, it's just there's not one thing that I would change or move it's just incredible stuff. I think and I am a season two lover and defender. Even even if there's something that, like, a subplot or something that may not be my favorite, like a lot of people's, right? Like the whole, like, Little Nicky or the James and Evelyn thing, because the amount of episodes are so small. I mean, we're talking 29 episodes, right? As a Twin Peaks fan, I think you really learn to just love all of it. Even if you go, I'm just not I'm not feeling this James Evelyn brother situation here. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but it's still Twin Peaks, and if I skip it, then I'm missing something in Twin Peaks, and um, and of course, David Lynch loved that part of Twin Peaks because he used a lot of that for Lost Highway just a few years later. Um, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I have figured out one way with that James and Evelyn storyline. One thing that they could have done, and it would have taken no extra time, and would have helped audiences now be able to deal with it and not complain about it. And that is because after the James and Evelyn storyline, he meets up with Donna and they have that picnic. And she says, you need to get out of here, so you can. I don't want you to think about Laura and Maddie and Evelyn, And so he needs to get out because everywhere he goes, it feels she's implying that he gets being roped back into these webs, right? Well, one way you could have done that is just have him like when he's like in the room and he's like looking around, he could have found a piece of paper or something that just implied that she was related to Teresa Banks. You don't have to go into detail. You don't have to do some long explanation. But what that would have done is it would have helped that Donna conversation at the picnic really show that this mystery is just webbing them in and he needs to get out. That even if he got out and met Evelyn, it still was relating back to Laura, right? It's such a small thing, and I think people would tolerate that subplot more if they knew it tied in to the overall mystery. But that's Monday morning quarterbacking.
It's fascinating. Did your family, or just going back to when you first watched Twin
Sure.
Peaks, Cameron, did your family watch it with you? Were they into it too?
Um, I think about 5 episodes had gone. And my mom was like, "What is this Twin Peaks thing?" Because I mean, obviously everybody was talking about it at work. I mean, I was at school, but she was at work. And I had been recording all the episodes, and I still have all those original recordings. And unfortunately, I do not have a VCR that works as well. Otherwise, I would be, downloading all this stuff because I have all the original promos and bumpers that like still to this day, like even the ones on YouTube that you can find are like they're missing stuff because people, oh, that's on, hit record, so you would miss like the first few seconds of it. So I mean, I have all that stuff. But my mom wanted to know what this thing was, and so she said, "Oh, just put on that first episode and let me just see about it." She watched the whole like 5 episodes that had aired, right, that afternoon. She was like, "Oh, this is great." Um, and it's hard to find anybody who doesn't love season one. Um, but whenever I see people hating on season two, even David Lynch, I say, yeah, but season two is where the mythology kicks in. There's very little mythology in season one. It is a small town, surrealistic murder mystery, comedy, crime thriller, but it doesn't, go into the lodges and Major Briggs. And I mean, I even say Major Briggs in season one, he's the stern father, right? But we don't love Major Briggs until season two. That's when Garland Briggs comes into his own, and we are now on, just loving that character. So what they did was they took everything we liked about season one or loved about season one and then just expounded upon it. But there's a few things they didn't. Like for instance, all through season one, Bobby's trying to set up James and put cocaine in his bike, right? Completely gone season two, right? And from what I understand, David Lynch wasn't a fan of the invitation to love segments, so that's why those disappeared by season two. So, um, it's but as for me, like, I think like, when I talked about the straight story, you watch that and you go, oh my goodness, it's like I knew David Lynch had it in him, but I never thought he'd have the opportunity to tap into this. But look at him go, it's amazing. So when I see David Lynch talk about how much he doesn't like season two and how like, oh, he wishes, they never solved Laura's murder and all that, right? It's like, okay, if that's true, and I believe him, but let's just think about this for a second. If that's true, we don't get episode 14, which is perhaps one of the best episodes ever made, and we never get Fire Walk with Me. So it's like, all right, sorry, David, I know it's the golden goose, but I'll take that trade-off because we got those two things, right? Especially if you get with the missing pieces and all that, you finally can experience the Twin Peaks movie we were kind of promised. Especially if you see, I know it's not canon, but the fan cuts and stuff like that, I think are wonderful because that's the movie that like we had been, and I know that's the movie he had wanted to make because that otherwise he wouldn't have filmed those scenes, right? So it was all supposed to be a part of it. But anyway, but episode 14 is extraordinary. Um, Perhaps it's definitely in the top five greatest episodes of the whole series. But those last six episodes of season two are I would argue as good as season one. I mean they're just, and what it was is that um it wasn't just the fact that David Lynch was back, because I mean he obviously directed the finale, but he was back the whole time because he was playing Gordon Cole, right? And the whole, when people make fun of Josie and the doorknob type of thing, that was Lynch's idea. And even um um
Yeah.
I'm spacing on.
Interesting why he would have chosen that to do that, actually, the doorknob thing.
Well, the
Yeah.
idea was that Joan Chen was going to go and film Heaven and Earth with Oliver Stone, and it was a way of keeping her character in place for her to come back, right? Um, but Harley Payton said to me that he remembers the day they were in a production meeting and they got a fax from David saying we're going to put Josie in the doorknob, and his reaction was, "We're doing what?" So,
Oh, yeah.
but
Brilliant. But then
what
again, there's been much more strange things that happened in season two than just putting Josie in the doorknob.
Right, but
Uh,
that's why people understandably thought that that noise in Ben Horn's office was Josie, right? Um, they weren't just pulling it out of a hat. It was like, because there's that moment where Ben quickly turns around, right? And from that noise in season two, and also Pete says, goodbye to Josie or hi to Josie at the airport, right? Um, so the implication is she was definitely still there. But those final six episodes are incredible. Um, Spectacular filmmaking from all the directors. Um, and that was those six episodes kind of cemented, my love for it. I'd been in love with it the whole time, but what you may not know, being overseas, was that when the Josie doorknob scene happened, Twin Peaks was effectively canceled here. Now they had shot or were making the six episodes, but at that time ABC wasn't planning on airing them. So there was this big letter writing campaign, which I wasn't involved with because I didn't know about it. But of course, you find out later this whole coup thing happened where people were writing to it. And eventually they played four episodes and then went on another gap and then put the last two episodes as a Monday night movie. But sometimes I think, can you imagine if ABC had not aired those final six episodes, right? One, there would be no Fire Walk with Me, right? Or at least not with the Annie aspect to it. Um, but what if the first time we saw those six episodes was either the Bravo re-airing or worse, the gold box or Blu-ray sets? I mean, imagine if 2014 they said we're not only releasing Twin Peaks on Blu-ray, but you're going to see the final six episodes that never aired, and that's what we saw. I mean, we would have gone insane, right? So,
our head would have exploded like the atomic bomb in episode 8. Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. I think about that. I go, what if they hadn't relented? What if we had been stuck with just Josie's and the doorknob as the end of Twin Peaks for 25 years?
Very would have been an incredibly different experience, put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know. Oh man. Um, so um, it stops at Firewalk with Me. Okay, I'm talking about the original
Yeah.
Twin Peaks iteration. 92, that was the end of Twin Peaks, pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah. Hmm.
25 years would go by, not and we get older. I don't know if we're any wiser, but we certainly get older. And this is something I've asked a few people, and it'd be nice to get your thoughts on this. Um, when the announcement dropped,
Hmm.
it's back. That gummy like is back in style. All those little Twitter things that were going on. Were you like me, sitting there looking at this and going, "There's no way this is real." Even up to the point where it got transmitted, I still didn't quite believe that this was really happening. What was your feeling at the time? How hyped were you for for it? Did you think we'd
Okay.
ever get it again?
Yeah.
What was going through your
Well,
head?
okay. I guess just let me pause for one second. There was a young woman who I was speaking with as friends, and and she said to me, "I don't care what kind of announcements they make, until those opening credits are on my TV, I don't believe it." Right? Okay, so about 2 years before, there were these rumors that Twin Peaks was going to come back. And I remember being on Ain't It Cool News at that time, and I saw a little blurb saying Twin Peaks is rumored to be coming back. And I remember thinking, that's strange. And I think they got that because USC had done like a talk, and Kyle was there, and Mark Frost was there, and Mark Frost said that Twin Peaks was a continuing story, which um made everyone go, what's going on? Um, but when Lynch did Mulholland Drive, he said that Twin Peaks was dead as a doornail, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I just thought we have this kind of bittersweet ending with Fire Walk with Me, right? Um, and this is why, like, when I was doing my shows about Twin Peaks, I thought, well, after this Blu-ray set comes out, I'm gonna wrap everything up and just move on to other topics. And the reason why is because we were finally getting the missing pieces, and the box set was called The Complete Mystery, which says to me it's complete, right? So when Mark Frost said that, I thought, well, maybe what they're talking about is the missing pieces, because there's a lot of material there, and it would be, and I mean, whatever 90 minutes as it stands now, it's the equivalent of two more episodes of Twin Peaks, more or less, right? So I thought, okay, that's cool. Maybe Lynch is going to recut a new version of it. That's also been rumored for years now. Um, but I thought, well, that's what we're going to get because it's the complete mystery. And so I was like going, okay, this is what, I'll talk about this and be able to move on. And then what, 2 months later, all of a sudden, surprise, we're coming back. And it's like, okay. But it also said to me, like, they don't consider this season three as part of this mystery. It's a new thing. Right. And I was like, okay. And I kept thinking, like, they're gonna have to either are they rebooting something? Or are they no, it's gonna be a continuation. Okay. And I thought, okay, how are they gonna bring in the new viewers? Right. So is this going to be like a new mystery, another woman wrapped in plastic, and that's going to lead them to discovering Cooper stuck in the lodge and all this kind of stuff? And I thought they're going to kind of do what season one. I thought they were going to start with this like a storyline that everybody could get into, and then get more and more bizarre as it went on. So you and I started doing some shows together, and we do the countdown to the premiere. We all disband. I sit down with my wife. We don't have our son yet, and here we go. It's the first scene of Twin Peaks that we have seen. Well, I guess since the missing pieces, but really 25 years since Fire Walk Me. What is this going to be? How are they going to bring people in? And you see this opening scene between Cooper and the giant, which will later be known as the fireman. But in episode one or part one, he's just known as what, seven question marks in the credits. And you realize, oh, Mark Frost and David Lynch don't really give a shit about bringing new viewers in, do they? This is made for us. Because that first scene, there's no, I mean, they are counting on you've caught up. There is none of this. previously on Twin Peaks. Like let's walk you through this. It was like, boom, here we are. And I remember thinking, thank you, bravo, for trusting us and making something. Yes, everybody's invited, but this was made for the long time fans, because while you can watch season one, two, Firewire, I mean, the series and season three, absolutely, you can just go right through it. But I do think that part of the power of season three was us having that 25 years of nothing. And I think you feel that, especially when that song "Out of Sand" is played, right? I mean, it's just like you just feel like, oh God, I remember that time when he said Twin Peaks was dead as a doornail. I remember, like he wasn't going to do film anymore. He was going to just do video. You remember Mark Frost writing all these books, and it was kind of like everybody had just moved on with their lives. It was kind of like a high school romance that you had. It was lovely. It lasted a year and you just left. You don't ask people at the reunion, like, are you guys going to ever get back together? And here's Frost and Lynch getting back together. And instead of going, okay, we need to start off from square one again and bring people in, no, they just resume where they left off, but just with the distance of time. And yeah, I mean, their approach has proved to be genius in retrospect. At the time, I really loved it, but I do know it did alienate old fans as well as new fans. I mean, there's a lot of people who love season one and two who don't like season three because it's so different. But my argument to them is, just it's just because you're watching it, once a week like everybody else, and you think you got to give it time, take like 4 or 5 more years, and then come back and just watch it. It's a different experience. You and I were talking right before we were recording that while it was lovely seeing it week to week, and I loved that summer, I will always love that summer of 2017 because I met so many wonderful people. That being said, it really was the wrong way to watch it. Now, if they had just dropped the whole thing at once, would that have been good? No. But I do think that I almost think they should have just dropped parts 1 through 8 over like a month, and then in 3 months drop the rest, because I think that would have been amazing to just get like almost mini seasons, right? Another 8 episodes and another 10 later. Um, but I do think I say almost said the film, but it is a film in retrospect. But I do feel like it does play better in 4 or 5 episode bunches as opposed to week to week. And I think you were very correctly in saying before we were recording that it's faster if you do it that way than just watching it in like parts.
I mean, even the scene where the guy's sweeping the floor
Yeah.
seems 4 times faster than what it was when I first watched it. You know, the scene where the guy's sweeping in the,
How could I forget? I
yeah,
mean, and people say to me,
certain
but
scenes like
that's,
that don't seem quite as long as they did when you first,
you know why?
it's perception. It's strange.
But it's also because we
You
were
know,
watching these episodes once a week, and we were watching the show and the clock. And we were like, can we just sometimes, not maybe with that scene, but just in general, can we kind of get on with this Dougie stuff because I want things to happen? And then you would feel like 2 or 3 parts happen or played and nothing happened, and then there would be a giant information dump, like, right? But when you watch it in a group, it doesn't feel like that, but it did week to week. And so I knew that people, obviously they were really tired of the whole Dougie thing. And I think it was nice in a way that, kind of by the end, people just kind of gave up and were like, okay, fine, Dougie. But when you watch it in the groups, it just doesn't feel like they're prolonging the Dougie thing like it did week to, because again, it's week to week. Like for instance, in season two, okay, when people talk about those middle episodes between um the Laura Palmer mystery being wrapped up and the Annie Wyndham Earl story really kind of kicking in, right? It's about 6 episodes. And then people go like, "Oh man, those 6 episodes, oh, they're so rough." And yeah, but when you watch them on Blu-ray or streaming, it's about 3.5 hours. Okay. It's not that long. It's pleasant. A lot of really good material in there. And even if you don't like certain elements, there's always great things in every episode. That being said, because it, but those 6 episodes, it was 4 months on TV. So that is why people tuned out because it was like, okay, Major Briggs disappears. Cooper sees it. The light goes out. Okay, great. That's the end of the episode. Fantastic. Then the next episode is where Andrew Packard comes back, right? And that's where they chose to do the Thanksgiving break. Like, you should have had the Thanksgiving break after Major Briggs disappears, not the Andrew Packard reveal, because no one cares about Andrew Packard, right? I mean, I like Dan O'Hurley and I like that whole subplot, but the general viewer is going to be more interested about where Major Briggs went than the reappearance of Andrew Packard. So, but it was 4 months of this, and it was just like, and then like then the Gulf War happened, and then you know, then you had to wait 3 weeks for this episode, and it's just kind of like it just killed the whole thing. So I'm not sure if the solving of Laura's murder killed Twin Peaks or whether it was if those episodes had not been spread out over 4 months, right? I mean, I've always said that what if I don't know why they had. I guess the pressure was wrap up the whole Laura storyline because my feeling is okay, we know who killed Laura, but they could have gone 4 or 5 episodes of the police and Leland Palmer doing a cat and mouse. I mean, right? And I guess it was just pressure just to wrap it all up because I'm sure Ray Wise would have been game for that. And then to do more Monday morning quarterbacking here. Um, Sometimes I think, and as much as I like the whole Annie Wyndham Earl storyline, I love it to pieces. Sometimes I think, wouldn't it have been amazing if at that midpoint, 16, where the Laura murder mystery is wrapped up, what if the back end of season 2 had been Fire Walk with Me and been Cheryl Lee as Laura Palmer in flashback, go meeting all the characters, doing her whole storyline, and then the ending of season 2 is the murder, and then ending it, right? I mean, because you could have had her with Josie and Catherine, and you could have, I mean, you could have really done what Fire Walk with Me was hinting at, and keep Lara Flynn Boyle and James Marshall and all them, right? Anyway, but like I love those possibilities, but I also love what we have. Um, it's and so when I see people like hating on stuff about Twin Peaks, I get it, I understand, but there's so little at Twin Peaks that I want to snuggle with every second that we have. Even if it's not my favorite storyline. And when you look at something like Little Nicky, again, because it was 4 months, it felt like an eternity. It's 1.5 episodes. It's not even that long, right? So it's like we're remembering things differently than how it played. So
But also, as you say about those characters they brought in season two, um, and their little story strands, uh, they never outstayed their welcome. Each 45-minute episode only had a scene or two with them
mhm.
at best. So they were on screen for maybe a couple of minutes or so. You
Right.
know,
One of the one of the
so
arg
and then you got all the rest of the good stuff within the episodes. So
yeah.
I don't think it really did affect things that much at all. They
No,
they, they weren't in it for very long at all.
some people get upset with me when I say
Yeah.
there's never been a bad episode of Twin Peaks, and I truly believe it. Like even if you don't like a moment, um, there's no overall like that episode was a complete stinker from start to finish. There's none of that, right? Um, but like even the scenes, okay, like Andy and Dick sneaking into the office looking for Little Nicky, and he's got the trench coat and the hat on, right? Okay, is that scene like, do we need that scene? Maybe not. I don't know. But is it funny? Yes. Are the actors good? Is the writing good? Is the direction good? Now, I may not love the Little Nicky storyline, but again, but the scenes aren't bad, right? They're well made. Nobody was like just throwing it out there and like the whole wine tasting thing is hilarious. Does it need to be in the show? Probably not. But is it a great set piece to show how uh, um, Ian Buchanan and Harry Goa's comedic timing is just fantastic, right? I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, again, I know it's ABC wasn't interested in this, but like, I could have watched a Ian Buchanan Harry Goa spinoff show. I mean, Andy and Dick Take America or something. I don't know. It just would have been hilarious.
I'm just thinking, you imagine if they brought Ian Buchanan back into season three,
Yeah,
um, and how funny it would have been his scenes with, because you remember, originally who was the father? You remember,
yeah.
that would have been really funny with Wally Brando and Ian Buchanan in the scene together. Can you imagine?
It would have been amazing.
That would have been hilarious.
Yeah, I always thought that if they brought back Ian Buchanan for season three, that he would have been the guy at the stoplight telling the kid to cross. Yeah. Like, but yeah, that would have been amazing. To have Ian Buchanan. And in fact, when I interviewed him, he was because when I spoke with him and Piper Laurie and Michael Horst, they had just heard the news of season three, but none of them had been contacted yet to be in it. And they all told me, I can't, I want to, I would love to be in it. And Michael Horst obviously was called. Piper Laurie, I don't know, she wasn't contacted. She wanted to do it. And then Ian Buchanan really wanted to do it as well.
Interestingly, Joan Chen wasn't either. I don't know what happened
Right,
with Joan Chen, but but
right,
they but they did use them in the scene. That when they did that reverse thing, that Laura didn't die kind of thing.
right,
That
right,
when they the time screw up with. But
right,
you do see that scene that you see from the pilot with
right.
Josie and Catherine, but that's the only little bit we got. Yeah.
But then you think, where would you have put Catherine? There's not in the story they created for season three. There's not really any room for Catherine, except that she could have been. I mean, she probably could have done a scene with Ben Horn in his office, right? I mean, there could have been a moment with that. Um, but it's. I mean, then you feel like, well, are you just shoehorning people in? Just to shoehorn them in. So,
I'm trying to remember, Cameron. I can't quite remember how Catherine's story the end of season two. How did that resolve? Where did we leave her? I can't quite remember where we were at with her.
With Pete and her brother going off to the bank.
Oh, yes, yeah, 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 yeah. Um, that's right. Yeah, they got blown
She,
to
I mean,
smithereens.
she wasn't at Miss Twin Peaks,
No, no. Yeah, I just can't remember when I last saw her, if you know what I mean.
but
What the
even
last sort
but
of bit
even
with me
Piper,
was.
but
Yeah,
Piper Laurie also told me she wasn't contacted to be in Fire Walk with Me, and
yeah,
everybody was contacted to come back for Fire
yeah,
Walk with
yeah,
Me,
pretty much. Yeah,
but she wasn't at that point, and she didn't know why. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not privy to those conversations, so, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't even know where you would put Catherine in Fire Walk with Me, so.
Isn't it? I mean, this is sobering. This what I'm going to say to you now. It's a sobering thought. This, but in season three, The Return, um, we were lucky to get a lot of the original actors back
Mhm.
playing their roles again, but a number of them weren't there as well. And what's even more gut-wrenching is a number of them that were in season three are no longer with us.
Right.
It's very sad.
So
Um,
when I
yeah,
heard that David Lynch had filmed Catherine Nicholson alone, I mean, I obviously didn't know what the scenes were, but you know, I had heard that they had done early filming with her and she was alone. My thought was because they went back and remastered those Logley introductions from Bravo and put them in HD. My feeling was that he recorded a bunch of Log Lady introductions for season three. And I thought maybe she won't be in the episodes, but she or parts as this known, but maybe she'll introduce them. And maybe he just, even though they didn't know how many parts there was going to be, maybe have her record her doing a bunch of different ones, and then Lynch could put them where he needed them later. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but I think that would have been an incredible thing to have her be a part of every part, you know. But it's but I gotta tell you, she was in it more than I thought she was gonna be. I
I'm
thought in the
just glad
first,
that I'm just really, really glad. I think we all are,
Mhm.
that we got her at all.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that she managed to do what she did because she's clearly suffering. She's
yeah,
clearly very advanced stage of illness there.
yeah.
To get her to do anything was staggering, you know.
And it's amazing how fast the illness, took over because when I interviewed her prior to season three, she, you know, was spry and and all that, and and she was lovely, and we had wonderful interview, and then she did something that no other interviewee has ever done with me, which is she would check in on me. Hey, Cameron, no, we haven't talked in a while. Hope you're doing well. Best to you and the family. Who does that? Catherine Nicholson did that. And it's like so when everybody talks about how wonderful she is, it's like I'm nobody to her. I interviewed her once, and yet she took the time to send me emails to wish me the best. So if she's doing that to me, I can only imagine what she was doing to her actual friends, you know?
I'm very fortunate that I got to meet her twice. Count myself very lucky. In fact, a number of people I have met, from the series, have sadly gone. It's very kind of like you think, oh my God, you know, um, it really does kind of hit you more when you've met them and spent a little time with them. Uh, um,
And
uh,
they've all
and
been,
they've all and now they're not here anymore, you know.
but I have to say,
Mm.
they're all wonderful. I've never met a cast member where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have met that person. They've all been great. So that's another reason why I love the material,
Oh, I
right?
agree
It's like
completely.
if
I've
you
never had a
respect the
bad
people.
experience with any of them. They are really, really personable, beautiful people, and lovely to spend. It's even if it's just a couple of minutes with them. Is you feel as if you've known them for a long, long time. They come
Well, you
across
have
like that.
because
Yeah,
you've
of
been
course. Yeah,
watching them.
well through through the TV, but
Yeah.
they have that kind of vibe about them, that aura about them, where you feel that your longtime friends catching up or something. It's extraordinary.
And they
Cheryl
and
Lee had
they
that power, had that
oh
effect
yeah.
on me. Al Strobel had that effect on me.
Oh
Very,
yeah. I
very
mean
genuine.
Cheryl Lee, when I
Yeah.
met her, which was just a couple years ago, um, she was so taken with my son, and because we went to this convention that she was at, and he decided to dress up as an elephant. Now, what I didn't know was she had just gotten back from Africa working with baby elephants. So she was this was it. Here's this little boy dressed up as an elephant. And so every time we would pass her, throughout the convention, she would always wave to him and that type of thing. And it's like, this is why David Lynch works with these people, because not only is there a shorthand, but they're just beautiful, wonderful people, right? And they can internalize so much and express so much. So when they meet you, even if they don't know you per se, it's a kindred spirit because you wouldn't be talking to them if you didn't feel that connection that they feel themselves, right? Otherwise, like let's just, I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody down at all. Um, but like some of these actors have been in a lot of stuff, but the general audiences don't know their name and sometimes can't put them together in something, right? Like Ray Wise, uh, I adore. Some people will know him from RoboCop. Some people will know him from Fresh Off the Boat. Some people will know him from Jeepers Creepers. But those that know him from Twin Peaks know Leland Palmer, right? And I remember when I first met him, and I asked, and this was back when he was promoting Jeepers Creepers 2. It was like 2004, and I was talking to him about Twin Peaks, and he said to me, "Oh, you know that show?" And I said, do I know that show? I mean, but you have to keep in mind, it was not on streaming. It was not on DVD. I mean, maybe the artisan set was out, but still the pilot wasn't released. It had been 10 years since Fire Walk with Me. It didn't go over very well. Him and Cheryl Lee and Kyle had not worked with David Lynch since then, right? Twin Peaks was something in the past, a long time ago. And so when I remember talking to him about it, and he was just like, "I can't believe you know this." I mean, but now, I mean, like, on Twitter X or whatever, I mean, like, people are always tagging Ray Wise on, "Look at this artwork I did," And so in a way, it's like, I think for years, the people involved with Twin Peaks didn't realize how much they were loved. Maybe they did when they went to the fests, right? But in day-to-day real life, maybe they didn't realize how, that people really generally cared about them. But now with social media and with Instagram and people, they're getting love every single day they log on. And so in a way, while sometimes I feel like the internet was a mistake, other times I feel like no, it was ultimately good because, like Frank and I wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't for the internet, right? And I mean, one of the things that I
Yeah, that
loved
opened
about,
up so many things to me. A
yeah,
world, a fandom I didn't even know existed, to be honest with you, prior to that. So
when
yeah,
season
yeah.
three came out, one of the things that people kept saying to me and to us, I'm sure, is that I was alone. I was alone when season one came out, or I was alone when Fire Walk with Me came out, or I was alone when I first discovered Twin Peaks. I don't know anybody in my town, or I don't know anybody in my life, or I had to introduce it to some friends, but they always talked about how it was a private thing, and season three allowed these people who all over the world who didn't know each other. I mean, remember the guy Arby that we talked to from Iran, right? And he had set up a Twin Peaks. Like, I wouldn't know this guy. He set up a beautiful Twin Peaks cafe in Iran. Iran. Okay. It's amazing. So, and to just meet all these people, and it's like all these people who were lonely or didn't know each other, or didn't even know anybody else who knew Twin Peaks, all coming together, right? And even though we were confused as all hell during all season three, and we were wrong about everything. It was wonderful and a beautiful experience. And then, just that's the thing that I miss the most about that is I wish that we were still all connected in that way. And even though, like, I understand, like, Twin Peaks may not continue in its current form anytime soon, but one of the positives about it is not the fact that the show, would go on and maybe a season four type of thing. It was the community around it that happened because I have no doubt that a season four would be announced and we started doing shows again about it, they'd all come back, right? But it takes that. So in a way, I feel like we're back to being pre-season three where we still watch it from time to time, we still talk about it from time to time, but we're back to being out in the real world, you know what I mean? But like that summer was so magical just because how many days a week did we all get together and we had 200, 300, sometimes 500 people watching because they all wanted to be part of that community. And I felt like I made some of my greatest friends during that time. And so occasionally I reach out to you saying how you doing and hope you're doing well. And you'd be like, "Oh, I'm kind of not feeling Twin Peaks right now." I'd be like, I understand." But I guess I just yearned for that community, and I missed that, and I missed being in touch with you and Hal and all them because I was when you are a grown person, an adult, sometimes it's harder to make friends in your real life or day-to-day life, right? And so like even though we're,
Oh, it's
an
certainly
ocean,
it certainly gets more difficult for me to find a woman. Yeah.
but I'm just saying like but we're an ocean apart. And yet like I feel like even though it's been a while since Frank and I have talked, it's just like it feels like no time has passed. And I just want to say it's a real pleasure to be talking with you again. I thank you for inviting me onto this awesome new discussion series you're doing.
Oh, thanks for that, Cameron. Yeah, it's been great. I'm very glad you did join me. Um, and it brings us neatly to our little conclusion here, I think now, where I ask the ultimate question to sort of end this chapter, as it were. So it's over to you, Cameron, for a few minutes to answer this for me. Cameron, why do you love Twin Peaks?
Well, I love it as a piece of entertainment. I love it as a piece of art. I love all the filmmakers involved. I love all the writers involved. Um, the cast is perfect. They not only are playing the roles, they're embodying the roles. Like, you usually when a show comes out, the pilot it can be good or decent, and then over time you'll see the actors work through their parts more and yeah, finalize their performances. But the pilot is like, I talked about Luke Skywalker. The pilot, let's say if I compare it to the original Star Wars, it is already built, it's already lived in. Those characters are complete from frame one. There's nobody trying to find their performance. Maybe you could say Kyle McLaughlin is a little harder in the pilot than he is in the rest of the series. Um, just because but I always equate that as Agent Cooper just coming into town. He doesn't think he's going to be here a long time. He just wants to just get this mystery over with. But while the show is so wonderful and it just means so much to me because it hit me at the right time of my life, what do I love about it the most is the feelings it gives me. It gives me that feeling of when I was younger. It gives me that feeling of all the friends that I've had throughout the years who have either seen it or watched other David Lynch films with me, talk with me about it. Uh, it's the kind of work that gives you something and then you feel like you can give back to it. And so there's this whole reciprocal thing. And so when they talk about, this potential Cooper loop in season three, I feel like not that we're stuck, but we're in this loop of like we love Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks loves us, right? And I mean, so much so that I made a 4-hour film about Annie Blackburn and Caroline Earl. So, I got to tell you this, Frank, if I can, just off when I met Kyle and I had him actually sign um, Maja Ljunggren, who did this wonderful promotional art for you. She did the poster for Queen of Hearts. And when I put it down on the table and I said, would you mind signing this? He looked at me. He looked at the poster, then looked back at me and he said, "You made a film about Annie and Caroline?" Like, I mean, again, the actors in my film are the actors on the poster. So it's not Heather Graham, right? It's not Brenda Mathers. But he knew exactly what that was. And I said, "Look, I know it's not your favorite storyline," because he really didn't care for this whole thing. He was, he'd done the Doors. He wanted to at this point just kind of move on. So he wasn't enjoying this whole storyline, even though I feel like he's like 110% committed to that whole final 6 episodes. I didn't know that at the time he wasn't the biggest fan of it. But um I told him, I said, "Look, you're a busy man, you're doing a lot of things, but I guarantee you if you ever sat and watched 5 minutes of this thing, you would feel like there's nothing but love in this. There's no disrespect here. This is a genuine thing from my heart to you guys back after what you guys have given to me." But he was so impressed with that. And then I said, "Well, I'm thinking about maybe doing a continuation." And he goes, "Huh." And I said, he goes, "You think if we take a picture together holding the poster, do you think that will help with promotion?" I said, "Kyle, of course that would." you know? So, I mean, I was just planning on taking a picture with him, but it was his idea to take a picture with the poster. And luckily for us, right before me, Stephen Miller was right there with his professional camera equipment. So he was able to turn around and take some actual quality because I was thinking I was just gonna have to take out my phone and selfie, Um, but anyway, we've talked about me and the actors have not disappointed. Well, let me tell you something. Meeting Kyle McLaughlin, who again was like my Luke Skywalker, this could have been a disaster, right? If like, the guy could not be nicer, right? And he is so personable, and I mean, again, he's not a Hollywood brat. He grew up in Washington. He's a regular person who became famous, right? So I'm just saying, Cheryl Lee's wonderful, Kyle's wonderful. Everybody I've met, Sherilyn Fenn, I must have gotten her on a great day because she was wonderful to me. And she adored my son. She picked my son up and held him in her arms for many, many minutes. Um, but what do I love about Twin Peaks the most is that I do believe to this day is still the greatest show of television. Season one, season two, Fire Walk with Me. I think the whole, even if there's things that I personally would wish maybe not that, it's, it, those things are so few and far between, right? And then over time, you just learn to love all that stuff anyway. I don't know. I just feel like it's a perfect show from start to finish. Um, I think everybody from the writers and creators, everybody gave 110%. And even when Lynch wasn't quote unquote involved with season two, he still was involved because they had to have him get script approval for every script. And you know, so he was involved because the directors were still taking notes from him. So um, but anyway, and then I just feel like the community that comes up from it, if you meet the right people, they become friends for life. And then with the internet, I guess I'm just saying, like, it created a world, and then it brought a whole world together. And even if we don't see each other every day or talk every day, I feel like you and me, for instance, will always be connected because we bonded over something that very few people still have never heard of.
Absolutely right. Yeah. To conclude that, thank you, Cameron, for that. Um, but we will wrap it up now. So again, thanks for joining me, Cameron. It's been really real fun, and it's been nice to hear your thoughts on the world of Twin Peaks. Very, very, really interesting, insightful stuff. So thanks again, and you guys, as always, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate the time that you take to just press that play button and watch this. Um, we'll be back again with another episode very soon. So until then, I will leave you with these immortal words as I always do. We'll see you in the trees.